I used to be a vegan activist. Turning my back on that was a bumpy road. Honestly, without the pandemic, it probably would have taken much longer. And without adopting more of a scout mindset, it might not have happened at all. I had been a vegan activist for about 2 years before I decided to quit. I'm still vegan, so if you're looking for an ex-vegan story where someone does a 180 and turns into a lion diet full on only meat eater, this video will probably disappoint you. My video is about why and how I left vegan activism, and specifically what role the soldier and the scout mindset played in that. Those are two terms from this book, Julia Galef's The Scout Mindset, which is a fantastic read, by the way. Hopefully it can motivate you to look a little bit more closely at those nagging, doubtful thoughts fermenting in the back of your mind. Because for me, finally taking a step back and looking at them, that changed a relevant chunk of my life. For the better, I hope. Of course, I'm just talking about my personal experience here. That doesn't mean activism can't be a good activity for other people. So let's quickly go over what I'll talk about in this video. First, I'll briefly explain what the soldier mindset and the scout mindsets are. Then we will look very closely at how the soldier mindset affected me and my decision to keep doing activism. Why I stayed even though there were good reasons for me to leave. Finally, I'll also talk about how I decided to quit when I was able to lean into somewhat more of a scout mindset. The scout mindset refers to the desire to see the world as it is, rather than how you would want it to be. It's driven by the wish to make your worldview more accurate, trying to integrate new evidence, whether it supports your existing beliefs or not. Concepts related to the scout mindset are truth-seeking, discovery, and intellectual honesty. Its counterpart is the soldier mindset. It refers to seeing the world as you want it to see, and downplaying or even discarding evidence that might threaten your beliefs. Related concepts are rationalizing, self-deception, and wishful thinking. Now, we have to keep in mind that those are archetypes. Nobody perfectly embodies the scout or the soldier mindset. More than anything, it's a spectrum. When I understood how bad the lives of farmed animals were, I wanted to help as much as possible. I wanted to actively contribute to ending animal farming. And I was incredibly patient. I wanted to do something right at that moment. I didn't invest time in researching other options. I simply went to different protests to see if something appealed to me. That's how I found my activist group. One red flag was that I didn't look into the available alternatives. As soon as I found a group I liked, with a form of activism that seemed vaguely useful, I stayed. I didn't ask questions like, what is the opportunity cost? Can I contribute more in other, maybe not obvious ways? Once I decided to participate, I just thought of justifications to stay, which smells pretty strongly of a soldier mindset. So far, I refer to the activism I engaged in a nebulous way. This is a good place to explain what I was actually doing. I participated in an educational form of protest called the Cube of Truth. I swear people come up with the cringiest names for things. But here we are. We would publicly display videos of animal mistreatment in different industries. Then we talked to people who seemed empathetic in order to nudge them towards veganism. Most of the time, the people were friendly and open-minded. I had only a few bad experiences in that regard. Those were very memorable though. I spoke with a man once who at first seemed very intrigued, just to realize that he was a Jesus Lives truther who wanted to convert me to his church. That's an hour of my life I will never get back. I had two main problems with the cube. If I had identified these problems for any of my friends, I would have told them, man, stop doing this kind of activism. Do something else to help the animals instead. But because I was in the situation, those reasons were hard to confront for me. I mostly stayed because I had been in a soldier mindset, and I would actively suppress doubts and questions nagging me. But yeah, let's dive into why I should have seen that the cube was probably not the best use of my time. The first reason that should have made me suspicious was that it was very, very hard to see if we were moving towards our goal of alleviating farmed animal suffering. This kind of activism was hardly tractable. A good goal is measurable, so I should have looked at the following question. Do I have metrics to see if my action will likely lead to positive outcomes? As far as the Cube of Truth was concerned, the answer was no. We had no way of knowing how many people went vegan or reduced their animal consumption. We could not estimate how well we were doing or what to do to improve our chances of doing good. After 2 years of participating in the Cube, we had 2 positive testimonials, if you will. 2 guys came back to give feedback. One had become a vegan after talking to us, the other one a vegetarian. But again, those chance encounters are not good indicators of how we were doing. 2 positive pieces of feedback in 2 years, that's not a lot. There were also people coming back to tell us that they had tried it and it didn't work out. That happened twice, though possibly more often, and my brain was just not psychologically capable of storing that. And I didn't take that as evidence that our approach was not working as well as we had hoped. Even though I did take the person who went vegan as a sign of success, I was pretty selective about that. And this is how I would reframe these conversations. The 2 people who came back reformed were a sign of success. The 2 who didn't change, well, they had their circumstances. It was not that our activism was potentially ineffective. No, I wouldn't dare think that. I did not try to find literature on how well similar kinds of activism worked. I would just focus on the 2 successes and press on. Additionally, we had no way of estimating potential adverse effects. Maybe the Cube of Truth intimidated people, scared them away from the topic, which given the name wouldn't be surprising, or made them uncomfortable and created some backlash effect against veganism. The conversations we did have were mostly with open-minded people. What did the people who did not stop think? We didn't look at that. If I had been an outsider to this activist group, that would have been my first critique. People, you need to have some valid way of measuring the results. If there's no way to estimate the consequences, you might not contribute to your cause. You might even undermine it. The second of my 2 reasons that should have made me leave is that everyone in the activist group could lead conversations with the passersby, regardless of their social and communication skills. Everyone there had their heart in the right place. But we did not have proper training. Some people had relevant skills because of their careers. Many did not have that background. So some people were better at conducting these conversations, and some people were worse. That did lead to some awkward situations. Now, talking about people's diet and consumption habits is a very delicate affair. This topic is very sensitive. If you approach it in the wrong way, people could see your questions as invasive or as an attack. You need to know how to handle this. But instead of trying to cultivate those skills, the organizers seemed to just appreciate that activists showed up at all. And honestly, I can understand this position. It was not something we were paid for. Everyone was volunteering and gave up a day of the weekend instead of resting or enjoying themselves. That does not change the fact that we had no quality assurance and no opportunity to give or receive feedback. That would have been a red flag for me in other settings. But because I wanted to believe that I did something good, I just felt vaguely uncomfortable. I didn't question it too much, even though I could see how untrained activists could potentially do more harm than good. Given those 2 powerful reasons to leave, why did I stay for so long? It mostly goes back to motivated reasoning, the soldier mindset. I was putting a lot of effort into convincing myself that a Cube of Truth was worthwhile for me. I had 2 emotional reasons for that kind of self-deception. The first was to avoid emotions like stress and regret. I didn't want to admit that those 2 years could have been spent in a better and more effective way to help animals. I definitely committed the sunk cost fallacy there. I had invested a lot of my time into the Cube of Truth. Letting go would be to admit that I wasted 2 years worth of opportunities. And that was really painful. The second emotional reason was to protect my self-esteem. I wanted to see myself as someone who contributed something valuable, someone who was helping to protect the most vulnerable beings. It felt good to think that way about myself. Sticking to this activism was also protecting my self-image. Then there were also social reasons. I liked most of the activists there. I felt a sense of belonging in that social group. It's hard to be in a crowd of people who do not care about the suffering of farmed animals sometimes. It's just a relief to hang around people who understand sometimes. I was afraid that if I stopped doing that activism, I wouldn't be able to hang out with these nice people anymore. I wish I could say that I decided to seclude myself, to reflect deeply on the issue. That I was actively asking myself if there were better ways in which I could help animals. Well, that's not what happened. At least that wouldn't be the full picture. What actually happened is the pandemic hit. And for safety reasons, we couldn't continue with activism anymore. This forced time off created some distance for me. That distance was critical to allow me to think about what I wanted to achieve with my activism. I was able to reflect in a more detached way without endangering either my self-image as a good person nor my sense of belonging. Like, my sense of belonging wasn't at stake because there were no meetups I could miss anyway. All my doubts and questions that I had repressed and pushed down, finally I had space to engage with them. It took some time to digest them, but once everyone was vaccinated and I had the opportunity to pick up activism again, I didn't join. All of that has taught me the importance of adopting a scout mindset. To remind you, the scout mindset is being motivated to try and understand things as they stand, rather than seeing things as you wish they were. You lead with questions like, is this true? How does this work? Instead of questions like, what proves that I'm still right? What I had to realize is that something I disliked being true was not in conflict with my goals. If the cube really is not helping animals, realizing that is not a bad thing. It actually helps me work on my goal to alleviate the suffering of farmed animals. I know that I have to look for change in a different place. It also means that if I would see strong evidence that cubes of truth were one of the most effective ways to help farmed animals, I would join again. What anyone can take away from this, I think, is that if you know what your goal is and you want to pursue it effectively, then it is more helpful to try and let go of self-deception. Even if it's painful and hard, and it was so freaking hard for me, trying as much as you can to be clear-eyed will be one of the best ways to achieve your goal. The change of mindset did matter for me in my activism, but I think this is applicable in all kinds of matters in real life, almost in every domain. So have I become the perfect scout who has let go of all self-deception, of all delusions, and have basically become Buddha? I would say no, definitely not. But what I would say is that while we can't be perfect scouts, improving is feasible and very valuable. That's all! Hope you were able to take away something useful. Nurture your scout mindset and see you next time.